Alright, what's up everybody? Brief intro. Today we are going to be just looking at a video. I saw this chick on Destiny GG, thought it was an interesting take and everything. And yeah, I want to just give my 2 cents on this. So we're going to get right into it, you guys, with this video by Brittany Simon, I believe is her name.
Hello, future worm food. My name is Brittany, and I'm a stupid person on the internet who has a camera. In today's video, I'm going to share with you my life philosophy. This is how I observe humanity. You can write it off. You can think I'm stupid, crazy, whatever. I am interested in your opinions, and I do want you to try to debunk my philosophy as a way to help me grow.
Okay, so I'm just going to say this right now. I have already seen this video. I saw it yesterday. But I didn't want to do like a first take reaction to it yesterday just because, I don't know, I just didn't feel like it. But so I have already seen this, so I can basically summarize everything that she's already going to say to save us a little bit of time, and then go a little bit more in depth as she does it. Basically, there's like these 5 levels. Level 1 is like, I don't know, the useless fool or something, basically like a beggar, homeless person, drug addict, like just shitty people, I guess. Number 2 is going to be like the satisfied fool, which is going to be like, she claims like everybody, like most people in society are satisfied fools. So like they're people that stay in their little bubble and da 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 da. They're like number 1s, except they're not like bad for society, I guess. So I guess that's like how that relates. Then there's like level 3, which is really not a level. It's just like a transitionary phase between level 2 and 4. Very odd, but we'll get into that later. And then there's level 5, which is like full enlightenment, da 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 da. Basically, the only difference between level 4 and level 5 is that level 4s are seemingly kind of like unsatisfied, or like they're in like this state where like they're transcended past level 2, but they're not level 5. And like basically the difference between 4 and 5 is just like 4 is kind of still like, I guess, unsure or angry or like has some bad feelings towards being a level 4/5, and then level 5s have accepted it and then like they're like full enlightenment or something. Like just think about it like as like karma and Buddhism, and like, you know, level 5 is like the reaching of nirvana, like you transcended. Level 1 is like, you know, you're the homeless beggar guy on the street. So it's just like this like pretty simplistic, like straightforward understanding. We'll get into more of it later, but yeah, we'll see what she has to say, and then we'll kind of like poke and prod at it a little bit, because she did just say in the intro that she wants us to debunk it. I don't know if it's a debunkable thing. It's just like her personal life philosophy. I don't know if you can debunk someone's personal life philosophy, but it's how she lives her life, or at least views people's introspection levels. So we'll see what's going on with that in a bit.
As a human. So I'm being selfish, and I am asking you to take 10 minutes of your day to prove to me I'm wrong, because if you can't, well then, I must be right. But with that said, let's go through it. This philosophy, disclaimer, was created with a co-author, but they would like to remain anonymous. So I will be taking all of the credit for this idiocy, or in some cases, geniosity, and I will go ahead and share with you the levels. Now,
at least there's like self-deprecation, right? At least like she's calling it idiotic and stupid, and then also partly genius. Like at least she's not just like full bore saying like, this is this fantastic philosophy I've created that everyone should know about and everyone should use and da 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 da. At least she's like completely humble about it, right?
This is important, and this is kind of the big disclaimer of the video. There are 3 specific reactions I tend to get when I share this. And if you feel like you might be any of them, consider either not finishing the video and exercising your free will and going to do something else, or just keep it in mind as you watch. The first reaction are people who love exploring the idea with me, they have a good time, and it's just something they think is silly, but they also think it's interesting enough to spend hours and hours discussing it with me. The second group of people are people who hate me and think I'm an idiot and an evil person, an arrogant and a narcissist. Which I understand, because what I'm about to say might feel very arrogant, but it is in no way, shape, or form meant to make people feel bad. It's meant to help you, because it helped me live a more full and joyful life. The doggo will give his input through the video, I am sure. The third reaction is people who have literally gone insane. I've had this happen. It is not a joke. I have had people experience...
What? People have literally gone insane from this philosophy? I mean, that's one hell of a philosophy. If a philosophy can literally turn a person insane, that's how you know it's on some cutting edge shit right there.
Insanity when exploring these ideas with me, because they get overwhelmed with not knowing the answers. But the point of the philosophy is not to force the truth inside of you.
I like the little screen shake edit there. Not knowing the answers.
It is to choose how you want to examine the truth. And so I will proceed to show you the levels and talk to you about them, but please remember to care for your own mental health through this process. Level 1 is the unsatisfied fool. Often these people can be examined as...
Okay, let's pause here before she says what she's going to say, because we can just read the video. So, zero satisfaction with existence. I mean, that's like so wholesale. Like, I'm not even sure like anybody on planet Earth really satisfies that first criteria. I mean, just if I'm going to poke and prod at like just the absoluteness of the phrasing. But obviously by zero satisfaction, I'm sure she means like virtually no satisfaction, right? Even like a homeless beggar on the street receives some small modicum of satisfaction, right? Uselessness can be on a spectrum, sure. Self-limiting, okay, so that's like self-harming, right? I can see that. Never takes responsibility, again, I can see that. A drain on family/society. So useless they can't even figure out that they are useless. They live in a fantasy of being useful. Wow. So there's a lot going on there. I mean, I'm not sure everyone who would satisfy being a level 1 fits all of those criteria. I don't know if it's like the DSM where like you need to satisfy like more than half of the criterion to satisfy, but like I'm not sure that everyone that's like completely useless like lives in a fantasy of being useful. Like I'm sure that there's a lot of useless people that completely know that they're useless. I guess this is an introspection scale. So like she's claiming that to be a 1, you have to be so useless that you can't even introspect enough to realize that you are useless. Thus, in your mind, you must believe you are useful. And I can see how that logically can kind of work out in some little ways. I think the only real gripe I have with the phrasing is just the very first bullet point with zero satisfaction with existence. I'm not sure if that needs to be on there. I'm not sure that even like would qualify you as having a low level of introspection. I don't know if like zero introspection would correlate with zero satisfaction with existence. Just a thought there, but we're going to hear what she has to say about it.
Lower functioning humans, but I don't mean in terms of ability. I mean in terms of choices. They're people who have every reason to succeed. Money, access, support, and some don't, but in general they usually do. And they, for some reason, are self-sabotagers. They cannot find satisfaction in existence. They're usually so unsatisfied with existence that they're even so useless that they can't kill themselves as a way not to be a burden on people or society. They're kind of like the virus of society. They cling to existence.
I mean, there's a lot going on there. I mean, I'm not really sure. Again, I'm not really sure like how introspection, satisfaction with existence, and usefulness, quote unquote, to existence all interplay in this system. Like they seem to be things that, like, to my general understanding, don't have like that much interplay in a person, right? So like a person's general sense of satisfaction and a person's usefulness to society, for instance, don't seem to have a large correlation to me, honestly. But maybe they do. I mean, it's possible. But yeah, I think the best way for me to interpret the system, because here's the thing, right? If it were just like a matter of usefulness and a matter of self-introspection and things like that, the system as it stands would work out a little bit, I think, would work out kind of consistently for the most part. But where I'm getting lost in the system is like, so I think of a 1, like the way it's being described to me, like I'm envisioning like a homeless person. I'm envisioning a drug addict. I'm envisioning a criminal. I'm envisioning a person that is useless to society, a person that is not able to introspect enough to make changes in themselves to better be useful for society and everyone around them. Because that's what I'm getting from that. But then it seems to be slightly contradicted when it's like, these are not people that, when she says things like, these are not people that are lacking ability, but are lacking the ability to make correct choices, right? So like, because I think a lot of these people that I consider to be useless are in fact lacking a serious ability, right? Like a mental ability or a physical ability or something that is holding them back that maybe isn't even changeable, right? It could be completely, an incorrigible trait that they possess, right? I'm not sure if that's the case or not, but we're going to keep going and we're going to try to get to the bottom of this system. This is going to be a long ass fucking video, by the way.
Into breathing our oxygen, but will in no way, shape, or form, no matter how much help they get better. We all know these people. They exist in our lives. Some suffer from mental illness, some don't, but they come in all shapes, sizes, ages, races, backgrounds. So remember, all of the levels, all humans fall into some category. So unsatisfied fools are personally people I never fuck with. I used to try to save them, interact with them, give them resources, but they drain. They drain, they're emotional vampires, they're all of the things we've talked about a lot on this channel, but I'm giving them a name. Level 1s, unsatisfied fools. Level 2s, satisfied fools. Now,
all right, let's read this. Satisfied fools. Most humans on planet Earth. Check. Lives in their own bubble. Check. Believes their bubble is the best. Check. Maintains family, friends, jobs. Check. Generally good people. Okay, so this has an interesting thing, right? So most humans on planet Earth, right? All right, I can, based on how her system is arranged, I can kind of understand what she's meaning by that. And then lives in their own bubble. This is where, like, I tried to figure out what she means by bubble. I tried to look up bubble and her name, and I tried to, like, look into it, and, like, there was a video that was claiming to, like, explain what bubbles were to a little more detail, but none of it was really getting me anywhere. This is a thing that I feel like her philosophy could benefit from, would be to clearly define what a bubble is, like, a little bit better than she has. This is just my own personal critique. I don't think that bubble is being clearly defined here or in any thing I've seen of her yet. So it's possible that there is some, like, obscure video somewhere where she does, like, very meticulously define what a bubble is, but I haven't seen it. We can kind of extrapolate on what she must mean by it, but it doesn't seem to have much of a it doesn't seem to be a very descriptive word that means much, is what I'm saying, how it's being used. It seems to be like a bubble is just a person's experience, right? And everyone's going to have their own experience, and everyone's going to have their own bubble, but then she also talks about bubbles like it's this thing that she's like, I like to go from bubble to bubble to bubble. So also bubble seems to be, like, to her, some type of, like, archetypal type of existence, right? So not just an individual's existence, but some archetype of a type of existence that you could move from one to another, and you could see different perspectives based on these different archetypal existences, right? There's this very weird convolutedness to what a bubble is that I think needs to be more fleshed out for this philosophy to have a little bit more legs to stand on. That's just my personal understanding, right? Believes their bubble is the best, right? So this implies that, like, a bubble is not just a personal experience, right? It seems to be like this thing that she believes, like, a person can belong to, but could also not belong to if they so chose, or if they wanted to move into a different quote-unquote bubble. Although this gets into very murky territory, because it would seem like it would almost behoove the founder of this philosophy to start defining subcategories of bubbles, right? It seems like it would make more sense to, if these are things that you can move around from, it would make sense to be able to define what a bubble A is, bubble B, bubble C, bubble D, unless it really is just a person's individual experience, at which point, again, it's not seeming to have much descriptive value, right? If a bubble is just our own experience, what even is it, right? Maintains family, friends, jobs, generally good people. Okay, for the sake of trying to, like, give her a little bit of rope to talk about, from what I understand, a bubble being is like a social circle, or like a social parameter that, like, is a person's norm, right? And so, like, that would be their bubble, right? So their friends, their family, their experiences that are generally thought to be normal to them, right? And I guess it'd be like going outside of your bubble, right? So, like, that's like a phrase that's used, like, in society. Like, you can get outside your comfort zone, get outside your own bubble. And, like, so I guess, like, an example would be, like, if you grew up in a middle class environment, like in a nice, like, middle class home in some suburb of some major city, and all your friends were like that, and, you know, you were like that type of person, like, let's just call you a cis white man, heterosexual. You had two brothers, and you had a brother and a sister. Your parents were married all growing up. You had a nice car when you were 16. You went to college. I guess that would be like the middle class bubble, right? The American middle class bubble, right? And that would be like an archetypal type of existence, right? And then I guess what you would say is a different bubble would be someone who grew up in, like, the south side of Chicago, like, gang banging from, like, the age of, like, 8 years old, selling crack when they were, like, 13 or 14, like, 12 even, like, who knows how young they were when they were selling crack, walking around with AK-47s in their backpacks, like, that would be a very different existence, right? A very different experience of life, and that would, quote unquote, be another bubble, right? And I guess if that's how we're thinking about these things, and if we're believing that a level 2 is someone who lives in their own bubble, and then maybe an addendum to the second point is lives in their own bubble and has never ventured out of that bubble, right? So they have only experienced this one experience and will never experience another, or have never experienced another. Maybe that's what's being got out here. And what she's getting at is that when you only experience this one fluid, very consistent form of reality, your mind is never able to expand and see a larger image of the universe. And maybe that's what she's getting at, and I think that is what she's getting at. I just think it needs to be a bit more clearly defined so that someone can more immediately pick up the philosophy and run with it. It seems a bit convoluted as it's presented in this video. That's just my critique. Now we're going to hear what she says about level 2s.
If you are a satisfied fool, congratulations, you're probably going to live a pretty good life. The reason I say this is because most people are level 2s. Level 2s are normal, everyday people. They're people who, they go through life wanting to do the basic things that make people happy. Food, shelter, water, family. They're people who are atheistic or in religions. They're people who believe in science or people who don't. They're people who are Democrats or Republicans. They're all kinds of people, but they live a life that is premised on the basics being met. And the reason I say this is because there are a lot of people who exist in the world as level 2s, but they think they're awake. You might know the term woke, but as you examine the levels, I think it's pretty clear that even woke people aren't as woke as they think, because there's a step above that. But before we jump into 3, 4, and 5, we need to talk about the actual subcategories of level 2. Level 2 has subcategories, A, B, and C. So if you're functioning level 2, but you fall into the C category, you're usually people who do pretty good in life, but can't quite get where you need to go to feel completely comfortable every day in your own.
I'm honestly going to skip the subcategories of level 2 because, I mean, to me, they're not really relevant or important to the rest of this video, because I feel like the main distinction between, like, what we're even talking about here is the distinction between 2, 4, and 5, really. So we're going to skip over all this because this is just, to me, superfluous information that perhaps could be interesting to evaluate a bit later, but at this point, not so much.
Who is your president, your politicians, your governors, your world leaders, people who want to control the masses. Power is great.
Okay, this is like so this, I think, is where we might run into a point of contention amongst the levels or something. So a high functioning level 2, right, is what she's calling these politicians, people with power. Like, she's claiming that, like, basically, like, in order to be someone who's lusting after power, I'm not sure if that's the claim, but it's how the claim is being interpreted by me. It's seeming as though she's claiming that in order to be a person that is lustful for power or greedy or any, like, what would be considered, like, generally, like, a negative, like, sinful emotion or something, it seems like she's saying, like, that kind of, like, necessitates that you're a level 2, which I'm definitely not agreeing with that. I don't think that makes the philosophy work, right? This is too convoluted. I'd have to, like, there's not enough information, like, posed in this video for me to really parse apart how the levels are strictly defined. But let's go into the next
power
part.
is dangerous. Every great philosopher, every great teacher, every wise person in the world has never sought power because power corrupts. Why else would anyone ever want to be in Trump's position? Why? Why would you ever want to be a world self, know the world, know yourself? And if you're living on Twitter, if you're living in politics, if you're living for power, if you're living for money, living for drinking, living for sex, you're living for the materialism of the world that only exists in this time. That's all a level 3 is. It's a stage, it's a bridge level. Some people call it wokeness, but I would argue that wokeness actually exists in the level 2s. Level 3s are a little bit above that. They're kind of like that moment in the Matrix where you get an opportunity to think of the world as one way or another. That metaphor definitely exists, but if you take it to a certain place, it just puts you back in level 2. So level 3 are the people who examine the world and see the kind of Truman Show-esque part of existence. But to go to a level 4 is darkness. There's no proof of anything safe there. So they hesitate, often driving themselves into madness, not choosing. You have to choose. I actually had experiences where...
Right. So she's just saying level 3 is just like a transition between level 2 and level 4. It's like it's kind of a useless stage if we're being quite honest. It's really not worth even. I'm not gonna say it's not worth at all, but I'm saying that it doesn't feel like very necessary. It feels like we can clean the system up just by removing it.
Or level 3s that I knew did go insane because they couldn't handle having to make that choice.
So it feels like we could just clean the system up. If we're already putting subcategories of level 2, I feel like we could just make level 3 because it is such a because it is a transitionary period between 2 and 4. I feel like you could just make like level 2D or something be level 3, right? Like I feel like creating like an entire separate level, I feel like it puts too much importance on it when really what we're recognizing is that it's not really its own level. It's really just between 2 and 4, but it's not enough like 2 or not enough like 4. We can just stick that in 2 and then make it a subcategory and make it like the most advanced level 2, right? I feel like it would make this system a little more streamlined.
So they defaulted to 2, but in sort of an unhealthy way, which is interesting, versus a peaceful way. And then you could be a level 3 that goes on to a level 4. That's all a level 3 is. It's a stage, it's a bridge level. There's nothing more to it. You either have to choose level 2 or level 4. Once you've made the decision to go to level 4, you can never again be a level 2. Level 4s are people.
So that's an interesting piece of this philosophy, right? So once you have went to level 4, you can no longer be level 2. You cannot go back. It's like, because like the defining characteristics, we're going to look at it right now, of level 4. Well, we're going to try and figure out how this adds up. We're going to figure it out though. Don't worry, guys. They see life for what it is. Okay. I feel like that's so vague that could apply to any person in any level, honestly. They see life for what it is. They have no inner peace. Goddamn. That seems reminiscent of level 1, if we're being quite honest. They clearly exercise free will. So that's a bit of an ambiguous phrase. They clearly exercise free will, so like clearly to an observer, like someone would clearly see them recognizing free will, or they themselves unobscured exercise free will, right? I don't know. Grammatically, I can't figure out what that really means. But I think what she means is that, like, I actually don't know. Like, it's like so ambiguous. But they exercise free will. We're gonna say that they exercise free will. Okay. Oh, I got it. I just put it together. She's saying that level 1s and 2s do not exercise free will. She's saying that they are more primally driven. She's saying that they are more operating on like an animalistic kind of instinctual level, probably. I think that's what she's possibly saying here. That because they haven't opened their mind up and seen life for what it really is, that level 1s and 2s are not really exercising free will, but level 4s have broken through to the other side and are now exercising free will. As free as they could, right? That's what I'm seeing. Can commit chosen death. She's going to get into that. That's like suicide, basically. They might be unaware of level 5 and assume they have reached a final destination. Okay, I mean, interesting criteria for being a level 4. It's also like being a kid again, but with the answers to the universe and no peace. Okay, so this is a very interesting level of introspection, right? So it's a level of introspection where I feel like the last bullet point kind of clearly defines how she means it to be defined in a weird way. So it's almost like being a kid again. I'm not sure what she means by that. That could mean a lot of different things. But with the answers to the universe, okay, so you're a kid, right? So like a kid in some sense of being a kid, some childish sense. But we all know that as a kid, we didn't know shit, right? So she's saying, like, you have all this knowledge now. So, like, you have the knowledge, but you have the childish perspective and no peace, right? Because most kids are at peace. Most kids love being kids. So that's a very interesting, it's a very interesting thing, right? I'm a bit lost by it, to be completely honest. I don't really see how any of these bullet points, this is where I think everything is lost, right? Like, this is where I feel like the video loses steam, or at the very least, the system loses steam, only because of how poorly defined level 4 is, right? So I'm going to try to, like, rephrase level 4 in a way that, like, how I understand what she's saying. I wish the bullet points just said it the way I'm about to say it, because they're just so convoluted right now that I feel like anybody who really wanted to could just come in and just, like, absolutely rip these fucking points apart and make them look so terrible. But, like, I'm being charitable here, and I'm like, here's what I'm interpreting this to mean, right? So level 4s have transcended beyond this more primal, primitively driven, archaic sort of everyday, necessity-driven existence, and they have broken through, and they are now quote-unquote enlightened, or at least partially enlightened, to the point that they are aware of reality as it is. They are aware of human beings as they truly are. They're not blinded by ideations and conscripted philosophies foisted upon them when they were younger. They've completely evaluated themselves in reality as objectively as they could, given their circumstances, and they now have their own understanding, and they see what life truly is, right? Which, I mean, as she understands it, I'm sure it's to be like, the universe is like 14 billion years old, the Big Bang happened, the Earth is like 4.3 billion years old, human beings evolved from like some abiogenesis single-celled organism that all life came from, and then all life evolved from this one thing, yada yada yada. Basically just like a super science, like, centric perspective, right? And like, that's how things truly are. And then, like, if you wanted to get even deeper into it, human beings were like monkeys swinging around in trees 30 million years ago, right? That's how things truly are. Like, that's the truth of the matter as we understand it, right? And then with this gained knowledge that can break you free of this, like, societal pressure to be this or that or fit into this or that bubble, now you're able to exercise your free will, and you're able to, with that additional knowledge that you've gained from being a level 4, live a more, I don't know what word she would use here, but live a different life than your bubble would have prescribed for you, right? But then there is this no inner peace thing, right? So she's saying that before you reach level 5, because 5 and 4 are basically the same thing, but 5s have the inner peace. Before you reach 5, you're 4, and it's this lack of inner peace because it's a new experience, right? Being a 2 is very easy. Being a 4 is very difficult because you have been a 2 your whole life, and then being a 4, it kind of shakes you up, and you have no inner peace because of that. And then eventually you will transition to 5, where you have all of the knowledge of the 4, but you just have the inner peace. That's basically how I interpret what she's saying. It's not very well defined here in these bullet points, however, but we'll see if she has any more to add to that.
Who examine the world, understand the hierarchies, understand exactly what it means to be a part of subgroup. It acknowledges that we're animals on a planet. It acknowledges that there is no God. It just acknowledges the most real reality of existence, but it has no inner joy. When I was level 4, I struggled. It was really hard. I did not like it. I know that level 4 was the hardest for me. Level 4 was this moment, this opportunity in my life where I examined life in what I thought was the realest way to examine it. I popped reality bubbles. I really researched and decided to go outside of my comfort zone, and I found that I could recreate that feeling of God in church. You know that feeling you get when you're a kid and you're in church and the Holy Spirit feels like it's inside you and it makes you cry and you're like, holy shit, God is real? I can recreate that through drugs, sex, social interactions, and honestly just sitting in my room in this chair. I can recreate it. And when you start to examine your life in that kind of a capacity, you need to come to a place where you're peaceful about it, because otherwise you end up in this place where you figure, like, what's the fucking point, dude? There's no joy. All I know is the answers with none of the joy. Level 4 is hard. And keep in mind, I know a lot of level 3s who decided to be level 2 and they know it and they love it. They're like, I could have been a 4, but fuck it, I'm gonna be a 2, because they're happiest. And the way they said it was, I was gonna be a level 4, but then I can't complain about petty shit, so I'm gonna be a level 2 so I can still complain about petty shit. And that was a really wise decision. That was them being cognizant that they still wanted to complain about petty shit, because most of the things that we complain about are petty. But again, when you're in the bubble, it feels very important. So when you're level 4, you're sort of examining all these like level 2s and level 1s, and it gets annoying and frustrating, and you kind of start to almost resent your own existence. So you want to make the conscientious choice to end your life. Funny enough, level 2s can commit suicide, meaning killing themselves out of despair. Level 4s cannot. Level 4s will never again feel despair in the way that level 2s do, and they commit suicide, which is not of their own control. Level 4s, though, can commit chosen death.
This is a weird, like, it's just like a weird addition to like the philosophical system, right, of introspection. It's very odd that you would try and attach like a level of introspection to a level of like happiness or sadness that an individual could feel, right? Like, I wouldn't, it doesn't seem to add up to me. It seems like introspection is completely devoid of, or not devoid, but introspection is completely deviated from like a person's emotional capacity, right? To say that like when you've reached this certain level of introspection, you will no longer feel despair. It feels a bit wishy-washy. It doesn't seem like it's rooted in anything. It doesn't seem like it would be grounded in shit, right? It doesn't seem like there's anything there. And it also seems odd that you would distinguish between it seems odd that you would call one form of killing yourself suicide and another chosen death. This all seems a bit convoluted. I think the philosophical nature of this, I feel like this philosophical outlook could definitely use a bit of tightening up, right? I feel like you could tighten it up by getting rid of this chosen death nonsense. It's just nonsense. It just doesn't benefit anybody to coin a new different type of suicide. It's like, all right, this is suicide, but this is not suicide from despair. This is suicide from whatever bullshit she's about to say about it. It's weird. It doesn't need to be there, right? It's a complete random distinction, right? And if I'm being honest, it seems like it's a subjectively derived distinction. I couldn't imagine why anybody would particularly come up with this unless it had been brought upon them, right? So odds are this person has experience with chosen death, meaning there was a moment in her life where she considered killing herself, but it wasn't through despair, and so she felt like she needed to put a new term on it. Well, I'm not going to get into it, but you don't need to put a new term on it. It would be suicide regardless if the reason was because you were depressed or because the reason was you were curious what happened after you died, right? It wouldn't matter why you were to kill yourself. If you were to kill yourself, it would be suicide. You don't need to put a new term on it. You don't need to try and it seems as though pedestalize it a bit. It seems as though you're taking it away from this, like, what would be considered a shameful, lowly act of killing yourself and bringing it into a different, slightly less shameful act, chosen death. It's irrelevant. It's a useless distinction that the philosophy could benefit from just getting rid of. I think. That's my personal take on it. I'd have to talk to her a little bit more specifically to figure out why she really uses this distinction, but I don't think it's really relevant.
Which is a conscientious choice to kill yourself, to end your existence because you acknowledge that this is the world. And you can or cannot make that decision. I was going to make that decision. I discussed it with friends of mine, and I had said, look, I think like I've made a pretty good argument for making this decision. And then my friend, who's a level 5, said to me, I see myself in you. You're about a decade behind from me, maybe less. And I looked at him and I said, you seem pretty happy and joyful every day, even though you know all of this. Okay, I'll stick around. And I did, and I'm happy I did because I became a level 5. And again, your goal is not to become a level 5 because then you'll never be a level 2. And a level 5 is alienating and lonely, but not lonely in the way a level 2 feels loneliness. A level 5 is comfortable with being alone because they know they can't go back, so they make peace with everything around them. The reason I can be happy every day in the way that I am is because all of this makes sense to me. 2020, Trump, people freaking out over COVID, all of these things are predictable and make sense because human beings are predictable. History cannot repeat itself. It is not a living thing. Humans repeat history. The answers to the universe already exist, but how many people want to examine them and conscientiously choose them? Very limited. And I think that's fine. I think it is so fine that at the end of the day, I shouldn't even be making this video. But I also know it won't matter because most of the world is level 2s, so I'll get dismissed as like a crazy person, and that's comforting to me. Listen, you want to watch a video about people giving you the answers? Watch The Social Dilemma. Acknowledge that the people who created the devices that you're all obsessed with, I don't know where my fucking phone is, okay? They created a thing to literally make you think you know what you're doing and you're making cognizant choices, but you're not. And the answers can start there. You want to know how I got here? Start there. And that's a new documentary. And then go and read the classics. Philosophers who have existed in our academia for years exist for a reason. When people started deciding old white men or people who have come before us didn't have the answers, was the moment you started to forget that they did have the answers. But it's not so clear cut. You can learn from every philosopher, and every philosopher is human and therefore flawed. And I'm not arguing that philosophers are all level 5s. Actually, that's sort of the opposite of what I'm arguing. Example is Rand. Rand is a high-functioning level 2. She was a person who examined human beings in a very superficial way and came to a conclusion that works for people like her, but not universally. The foundation of Rand's philosophy totally disregards human biology and evolution by disregarding the idea that we're herd animals or need other humans. So Rand is a high-functioning 2 and a philosopher you should definitely read so you can dismiss her points with knowledge. I remember I met a Randian not too long ago and I thought, man, this guy must know some shit. And then I read it and I was like, this guy knows nothing. And it was so annoying. But at the time, I was a high-functioning 2 and I thought this was the guy. Then I hit level 3, then I hit 4, and now I'm at 5. And I think we can all agree, if you've been watching me long enough, you see a change in me. This is the change in me. But guys, I am Brittany, and I love living as a level 5, but it was the hardest thing I ever did. It was over 16 years in the making.
Okay. That's the video, you guys. So yeah. In summary, level 1s, useless, drug addicts, homeless people, shit like that. Level 2, pretty much everybody else, living happy-go-lucky lives, real good, you know, ignorance is bliss sort of thing, right? The best place to be, if we're being honest about it, right? Being a level 2. Level 3, kind of not even, doesn't exist. It's a transition between 4 and 2. 4, you've transcended the everyday happy-go-lucky ignorance is bliss life, and you've got this grander knowledge of things, and you know for things how they are. Unfortunately, with that grander knowledge comes a bit of inner turmoil. And then level 5 is getting rid of the turmoil by making peace with everything around you, realizing you will never be able to go back to being a happy-go-lucky level 2, and you will have to make do with what you have, which is the level 4, and by making peace with all of that, you transition to level 5. Right? A very simplistic philosophy that seems to have been kind of, you know, hashed out through a lot of Eastern and Western philosophies from ancient history and from ancient philosophers. It's all kind of been said before. She's just saying it in a bit different terms, putting it in a very simplistic 1 through 5 levels. I would argue you really only need 4. The only thing I think that could really be benefited from this would just be to like more clearly define what bubbles are in level 2, or maybe completely scrap that word, come up with a new word that will make more sense to people, because bubble as a word is, I mean, it's just a weird word, because a bubble is like, you know, like kids blow bubbles, you know what I mean? Bubbles are like little spheres, like, and I get what she means, but a bubble seems like, bubbles can't like interact with other bubbles, you know what I mean? Like bubbles don't overlap, bubbles are, it's like it's a too like real word. It needs to be more metaphorical, or it needs to account for some immaterial part of existence and consciousness and reality that people's introspections are tied to, right? Because our consciousness really is where our introspection comes from, and bubble seems to like materialize it a bit too much for me. I'm not sure. I mean, I just think that I just don't like the word bubble, if I'm being honest. But I think the philosophy works. Like, I mean, if you're able to interpret everything the way I have, which I'm not sure if I'm interpreting it correctly or not. I'm sure she would probably have a a few criticisms to how I'm interpreting it, but yeah, it does seem like a pretty simple, straightforward sort of like evolution of like a person's consciousness. And she's claiming that most people never get beyond level 2, which is probably true if we're being honest. Most people don't introspect that much. Most people don't analyze the world that much. It doesn't behoove a lot of people to do that. A lot of people are kind of born into lives that being a level 2 is the best way to live the life that's in front of them. And so it wouldn't make sense for most people to go beyond that. It would even be detrimental a lot of times to people to do that. So I think we're all on the same page here. I don't think I have much to add to the philosophy. I think it's an interesting take on everything. Not something that I personally like use at all to analyze people or anything. Not something I would use either. I feel like in practice, all that this philosophical system would do would be like, upon meeting a person and interacting with a person, like you'd either immediately cast them into like level 1 or 2dom, at which point it would be like, I don't know, it would seem uninteresting, right? Like if we're saying that most people are level 2s anyway, and then you meet a person, it's like, oh, you're level 2. It's like it would kind of just defeat the purpose of talking to a person and learning anything about them if you could just immediately cast them as like this primally driven, unawoken, entity, right? It would just be like, well, what's even the point? It would kind of dehumanize a person in a weird way, at least from my perspective, right? Because I like to think of people as their minds, as their consciousness. And if your consciousness was just completely unawoken and completely unenlightened and just had nothing to offer at all other than being just this primally driven, like, animal bent towards survival, it would kind of it would dull any human interaction I had, which honestly I kind of already have that, but I don't think thinking about it in such a simplistic term as just 4 numbers, I think that would kind of, I don't know. I wouldn't use this philosophy personally, but I can definitely see how it could help someone who needed that structural understanding of a person, or like needed to place a person in a box. My mind does it automatically. My mind puts people into boxes. I just don't have numbers and letters described to them. You know what I mean? They're just boxes of types of people that I put them into. I don't need to like hash it out into a very finite philosophy. I feel like it could even be limiting, if that makes sense. It's conceivable that like the organizational abilities that this philosophy helps her with, it could be that that's useful to her. Whereas to me, it would seem like a limiting factor, right? Having 4 numbers, 5 really, but 4 essentially numbers that a person can fall into, and then that would sort of predetermine everything else about the person. It seems like it would limit a bit of human uniqueness. We could argue about human uniqueness also, but it wouldn't really be worth it. Anyway, guys, that's the video. Brittany, if you see this, I'd love to hash it out with you a little bit. If not, totally cool.